Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge the Whadjuk Noongar people as the traditional custodians of the land I am presenting on today, paying deep respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Hello and welcome. This video is going to be a referencing refresher going through common mistakes seen in APA references. For further referencing information, please visit the library website as there is a wealth of resources there available to staff and students. This is our example reference list. You can see it has been titled References with our reference list entries below. If this was a student assignment that I was marking, the first error I notice is the reference list is not in alphabetical order or formatted with a hanging indent. Updating these reference entries, we can now see that the formatting has been altered to include that hanging indent, and the references are now listed in alphabetical order according to author surname. Now let's take a look at these references in more detail. This is our first reference list entry, and from the content, I can see that this is referencing a website. The first thing I notice about this reference is that the author name has been abbreviated. For reference list entries, organizational names need to be listed in full, which would look like this. You can see in the below example that the author name has been changed to include the full organizational title. The second thing I would check in the reference is the date. If there is no published or last updated date, n.d. meaning no date, in brackets after the author is the correct formatting. The next thing I notice about this reference is the title of the web page. Web page titles need to be in sentence case and italics. Updating this in the reference below, we can see that the title is now in italics and the capitalization has changed so that only proper nouns, titles, or subtitles are in capitals. The next thing I notice about this reference is that the organizational name has been repeated. If the site name and the organization that has authored the content is the same, then we do not need to include this information twice, as it is redundant. Removing that from the reference below, we can see the correct reference. Taking a look at the reference now with those corrections, we can see that the institutional author has been listed in full. The date of publication, last update, or in this case, no date, has been included and formatted correctly. The title of the website is in sentence case and italics. In this case, we do not need to include a site name as it is not different from the institutional author. And a live link has been included at the end of the reference. This is our second reference list entry, and from the information captured, I can see that it is a journal article. Checking for mistakes, we begin by examining the listed authors. At first glance, these author names appear to be correct, listed as author surname, comma, initial, full stop, comma, and so on. However, there is a missing piece of punctuation, an ampersand before the last author name. In the reference below, we can see this ampersand has been added here. Moving on, we check the next piece of referencing information, the date. In this reference, the published date is listed correctly in brackets after the authors. Now we check the title of the journal article. Again, at first glance, this looks correct and in sentence case. However, on closer inspection, I notice that the subtitle needs to be capitalized here and reflected below. We move on to the publishing journal. Here I notice that the journal and volume need to be italicized. Notice the changes again here in the reference list below. After updating that, we move on to formatting the volume and issue. Volume and issue information needs to be listed with the volume in italics, followed immediately by the issue not italicized in brackets, followed by a comma. To finish our check of this journal article reference, we look at the page or page range, which has been listed correctly here, and ensure that the DOI at the end has been formatted correctly and presented as a live link. With those alterations, we now have a correct journal article reference. Our authors have been listed correctly with the proper punctuation. The date of publication has been included in brackets. The title of the article is correct and in sentence case. The name of the publishing journal is included after the title and has been italicized. The volume, issue, and page or page range is added and formatted correctly, with the volume in italics, followed by the issue in brackets and a comma, then the page range and a full stop. And finally, the DOI for this article is included as a link. Our next reference is an entry in a subscribed library database. Starting as we have done with the previous references, we check the formatting of the author name. In this case, additional punctuation is needed. In the updated reference below, we can see that it now follows that author, comma, first initial formatting. Moving on to the date, we can see this date information has also been formatted incorrectly, with the content out of order with no brackets. Changing that in the reference below, the date now reflects the correct format, with the year, comma, then the month, and the day in closed brackets. Next, we check the title. Again, this is missing proper italicization. Updating that in the reference below, we can see the title is now following that italics format. This content has both an author and an editor. Checking the editor information, I can see that the editor name has been added correctly. However, the editor notation needs to be simplified. See here in our reference below, that editor statement has now been updated to ed. The name of the database has been included correctly after the editor notation. However, as the Nutrition Reference Center is a database that the library subscribes to, no URL is required at the end of the reference. Removing that link tidies up the reference nicely. Taking a final look at that library database reference, we have included the author with the correct formatting. The date of publication has been formatted correctly and included in brackets. The title of the page is in sentence case and italics. The editor name has been added correctly with editor abbreviated, all in brackets. And finally, the name of the database has been included to finish the reference. As this is a library subscribed database and there is no DOI associated with this content, a URL is not required. Getting towards the end of our reference list now, looking at the content, I can see that this is a reference for a book. Again, starting with our authors, immediately we notice that the author names are not listed correctly, with both first and surname written out and listed. Below, we can see those names updated to that author surname, comma, initials, full stops and comma, with an ampersand in between. We then check the date of publication, which is listed correctly in brackets after the author. Continuing along, we run into issues with the title of the book. The book is italicized, however, it needs to be updated to sentence case. In the reference below, we can see that change reflected. Additionally, this eBook note is not necessary or reflective of the true title, so needs to be removed. Checking the addition statement, we have conflicting and incorrectly formatted information. The addition should not be italicized and directly follow the book title in brackets. And lastly, we check the publisher information to conclude the reference. In this case, it has been included correctly. With those updates, we now have a correct book reference, starting with the authors, the date of publication in brackets, the title of the book in italics and sentence case, followed by the addition statement in brackets with addition abbreviated to ed. And finally, the publisher information to finish the reference. Our final reference list entry is another journal article. As demonstrated, we first check the author information, noticing immediately that there is missing punctuation in the present author names and missing information where this et al is sitting. For resources with less than 20 authors, all author names must be included in the reference list entry. Updating that and the missing punctuation in the below reference, we can see the 10 author names have now been included and formatted correctly. Moving through the reference, it appears that the date of publication has not been included. However, on closer inspection, we can find it hidden further down in the reference information. Adding that to our reference below, we now have the date of publication following the listed authors in brackets. Continuing along, we can see that the title of the article has been added correctly in sentence case. However, the name of the publishing journal and the volume is not in italics. Updating that, we can now see this formatted correctly in the below reference. Next, we check the formatting of the volume, issue, and page range. Updating those elements so the volume is in italics, followed by the issue in brackets, a comma, and then the page or page range. And finally, we check the DOI, which in this case also needs to be updated to a live link. With those corrections, we now have our final journal article reference. The authors have been listed correctly and in full with the proper punctuation, followed by the date of publication in brackets, the title of the article in sentence case, the title of the publishing journal in italics, followed by the volume in italics, the issue in brackets, and the page range, with our live link DOI to complete the reference. With those corrections added, our references are now listed in the correct APA 7 style. For more referencing information and support, please visit the library website or speak to your campus librarian. This concludes this referencing refresher video. Thank you for watching.